one of the things I would say is that in a free market capitalist kind of makeup, how is looking more inward within specific circles, right? So around your own kind of community, is that running against the grain of how free market capitalism works? But I'm going to allow Anthony to come in and provide his take on it.
No, from a cultural standpoint, I think there are certain things from a cultural standpoint within a community that is it affects our identity, right? So we'll look at, for example, let's use music as an example. And people say, okay, music, whatever music is, it's just music, entertainment. Like, I listen to it, it doesn't affect me, you know what I mean? Listen, it depends on, I'll give you a perfect example. When Bob Marley had albums that were banned in Africa because it was feared that it would help rebellion in Africa, right? We get a certain feeling, one love. It's like it creates certain emotional state and certain identity with it, brings out certain thing within us. Now, are you going to listen to a Bob Marley music and then automatically become a Rastafarian? Probably not. But I think if you're in a certain emotional state, it might shift you or it might push you a particular way, right? Which has everything to do with our identity, by the way, because who we are as individuals show up in 3 domains. It shows up in our body, emotions, and language, right? That's the way we observe the world, shows up in those 3 elements, and then we take actions based on that. And if we are in an environment, for example, where we feel repressed and we see certain negative elements, and you listen to a Bob Marley song over and over about, peace and love, versus you listen to something with a different type of energy, it might not be the deciding factor, but it could be a contributing factor to who we are. And I think from a cultural standpoint, that's why people go, oh, but, you have these people from this other community, they listen to it and they're the biggest supporters of it. Well, yeah, if you live in a nice, beautiful environment and you're in a suburban area or whatever, I mean, who are you going to, what are you going to do? And throw some eggs on some, you know what I mean? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
If you're that angry? Or if you're in a certain element in a different space, and you're driven by that and you go up with that energy, and that energy is, there's more opportunity for it to be destructive, right? So we create this, again, from last week, we create a space for that. So I think there's certain things in the community that we uphold and cherish, and even certain individuals that we look at that have become really successful, and we trace their backgrounds. And not to say a person can't transform. That's great. You transfer this element, negative element, and transform it into a business. But some people go, okay, let's look at the blueprint. The blueprint was highlighting people within the community, who have taken that right path and achieved certain stability. How often do we highlight those individuals? A lot of times it's sports related, it's sports related, or it's entertainment related. I think no, there's a more focus on business, thank God. Since COVID, I think in the more recent years, I think there's a lot more influence on financial literacy and business, and I hope it continues that trajectory, and I think it's shifting some of that. But I think from a cultural standpoint within the community, it's who we uphold, it's who we look at, and the people who we uphold to doing Fraser was saying is that the people who we uphold, the people who we look to, those are what we should be showing our kids. So like my son, I have West Hall, who is very successful here in Canada. I bought his book, and I played the whole book with my son. I would go through it, right? Because West Hall started from scratch. I mean, he's abandoned by his father and groomed by his grandmother, and the guy is like huge now. I want them to say that's the blueprint. It doesn't have to be entertainment. That's just hard work, business. So once we create that, the way we observe the world, that starts to become, that's an opportunity from a
Anthony,
story.